Welcome back to our discussion about innovation in sportswear design. Sorry about the disconnect earlier on, technical issues which were bound to happen with a cross-continent session that we're having. We were hearing from Ahida Zanetti about her inspiration and the actual process of innovation in sportswear design, and we heard about the hijud and the burkini as well, and we'll touch more a bit more on the burkini a bit later as well. But I wanted to bring in Dana Abdul Karim at this stage. So Dana, tell us a little bit about your journey as an athlete and how sportswear design and innovation could have potentially helped you to a greater degree, and if it is right now.
Thanks, Rim. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Well, I guess I'm the person that started talking about at the beginning, the netballer that was wearing all the very different layers to just get on the court. I've always loved sport. I love playing any game. Give me the ball, I'm very comfortable. And prior to being a hijabi, it was a lot easier, and I probably wasn't aware of the difficulties. As I progressed into secondary school and then made the transition to being a full hijabi, there came my worry, first of all, that was it. Sports world wasn't for me. But thankfully, my parents actually encouraged me to innovate myself. So there wasn't the hijud at the time, there wasn't the burkini, there were not the provisions that there are now, and I had to get creative. I had to innovate ways to get me on the court or on the pitch or on the field, because that's where I wanted to be. The difficulties I had with it, because I was that first person as a teenager, governing bodies, coaches, selectors, they didn't know what they were looking at. And there was me as a teenager, not really knowing. I probably need to explain myself. So a county netball trial, I'm there in my tracksuit bottoms, my multi-layered long sleeve top. I fashioned to be covering most of my hair because I had quite short hair, a high-necked top, my netball bib, and there I was trying to keep up with everybody else, be as fit as everybody else, thinking I'm playing really well. Little did I know, the selectors had already put a cross by my name, assuming I was too lazy to get changed, and too lazy to take it seriously, because of netballers didn't look like that. Thankfully, my PE teacher, who was on the selecting team, could explain on my behalf. And with thanks to her, they then looked at me rather differently and saw some admiration in my efforts to get on the court. So my quite, arbitrary innovation to get on the court almost took me out of that scenario. They selected me, got to play for my county, but then at the time the netball rules were quite stringent. You had to wear a dress or you had to wear a skirt. So then still having to innovate how to make things work was a real battle, and having to get approval from the governing body to wear one type of scarf, one type of headwear, and we had to walk around with it. We had to have it with us for fixtures, for county games, for regional matches. And again, this was all happening around, and I was a girl that just wanted to play netball. And there were occasions where umpires and officials would tell me, you need to get off the court and remove that. It's like, well, I can't. This is who I am. This is how I access my sport. This is my faith. And needing to kind of innovate and also educate at the same time, when actually I just wanted to be seen as a player, was a real battle. That was in netball. Obviously, I've then played other sports as well. As a footballer, I'd had difficulties, again, having to figure out the shorts issue, which I know, Rim, you've played plenty of football yourself. I know you know exactly what I'm talking about. Trying to negotiate, how do we do this? How do I also appease my dad at the same time so that he feels safe and secure, that I'm balancing those two worlds? And then Rounders happened. And Rounders, maybe because of they're a smaller governing body, they supported me in needing to innovate. I said, look, I can't wear the T-shirt. And they went, fine, we'll make you a long-sleeved one. So they did it for me. They fixed it for me. And it meant that I could play quite easily. And so much so that by the end of it, towards the end of playing as an adult for the England team, I was the England kit model, which I think made quite a stance for that sport, supporting a sportswoman regardless of what she looked like, which angle, what colour hair, which faith. And that all played in its part. Alongside being a sports person, I am a trained PE teacher, and through my teacher training, I had to swim as part of my degree to learn how you would teach somebody to do that. And that was in a mixed gender pool, and it was before the burkini. And again, I had to innovate and be quite creative in how do I create something that's modest, that's loose, that does the job I need it to do, but allows me to still do my lectures. And I used all kinds of different things. I had to put elastic bands on my wrist to stop my clothing from riding up. I probably didn't look particularly professional, but I was also incredibly stubborn. I wanted to have the same university experience, the same expectation as my peers. And it meant I wanted to swim alongside them and be tired alongside them. And again, the university didn't know. They didn't know that there was an issue here. They didn't know that there was a problem. And, you know, had Ahida invented the bikini 10 years before, then I'd have been sorted. But at that time, I needed to find a way to access something, because otherwise I had to leave that environment. And I love being a PE teacher. I love sport. I love everything about it. And so through stubbornness, through creativity, through sometimes a willingness to look really bad and really silly to get on that court, I've had to consider these different methods and different ways. Now, things are changing. You know, I've got my Nike hijab that I will go and run in. I've got the modest burkini. I've got 2 types actually that I will swim in, and things are becoming so much easier. But also, I'm not always the only one either. And so to have been somebody on the sports field or the court, seeing how things have changed over time, that's really reassuring. It's really positive. I'm glad nobody else has to look like the fool that I did. I'm glad that people are probably not in as much danger of passing out because of all the layers that they're wearing. But it has taken a long amount of work and a really long distance. But it is all the better good now and vastly improving.
That's you said so many things. Really resonate in terms of and you said something about, you know, at the netball trials they didn't know what they were looking at. I find that in itself is quite a significant statement in terms of how the sports industry possibly wasn't ready to receive individuals like yourself, like myself, and all those women across the world who have gone through that journey that you've gone through. You know, with these endless options that we now have, you know, as Ahida and fellow innovators in sportswear design have developed a product which has been based on a necessity, on a need. With these endless designs that are out there, do you think your engagement with sport would have been to a greater degree to potentially even enable you to enhance your, you know, I remember at school trials for sports lacrosse, I would be in like our school colors were a yellow and a navy blue, and I'd be in this navy blue sweatshirt, you know, long sleeve sweatshirt and tracksuit bottoms, and I know what it was like. Do you think your engagement with sport would have been that much better? It could have potentially pushed you even more if those had been around when you were growing up.
I think without a doubt. I mean, football in particular, football was my first sport. It was my first love and something that I was quite talented at. And I ultimately left football in terms of playing it at the highest level because of it became so difficult. Things were not in place. The assumptions about limitations because of faith, or the lack of knowledge that you could be a Muslim and a sportswoman on the field at an elite level made things very hard. And as you know, I was 13, 14, 15 years old. I could shoulder some of that. But at that time, and in the world I live in, you know, I live in Sheffield rather than London, which in the UK is not as diverse. I didn't have other people that could do, and for us to figure out a way together. And so my parents tried as best as they could. They approached national governing bodies saying, look, can you look at innovating something that's opaque and breathable that my daughter can wear? She plays at England level. And they were told that there's no demand for it. And I think that could have been enough of a sign for me to go, well, this is not the place for me and I'm going to walk away from it. Maybe had I been a teenager in this generation with what's available right now, the progress could have been more swift. It could have been faster. You know, I was right on that precipice in terms of netball, in terms of getting to the very, very next level. Maybe if I wasn't wearing 5 kilos of clothes, that would have been easier. But I'm not bitter about that fact. I think, unfortunately, you know, there needed to be innovations throughout sport for genders, for different countries, for different faiths. this has been the time and the transition for Muslim women, and it therefore means that the platform for the next group of women is much easier. And I'm really thrilled that that is a prospect that will happen. But for me, yeah, there is that part of me that thinks, oh, maybe I could have been that person, but I also don't need to have been that person. I know that what I've done worked for me. I've had some fantastic experiences from it, and I'm good with what I've got. But of course, I probably would have progressed far quicker.
Yeah, and it's interesting you talk about the market. I want to bring Ahida back in here, but we're looking at the global sportswear market, and you know, only a couple of years ago, it was estimated that sort of globally, the entire sportswear market is worth something near $150 billion, and you know, cumulative growth kind of forecast for the future. And obviously the modest sportswear space is one of those spaces where there is a forecast of this huge rise. And as Dana was talking about there, you know, before it was a sense of people, there isn't a demand out there, but the fact that the Nike hijab has come out shows, I think, that, you know, people really want to be a part, from the Muslim community, really want to be part of the sports space. So can you, Ahida, talk about the market in terms of where do you think we're going in terms of the trends? You know, is there potential needed out there in this space?
Well, just like what Dana was saying, that she had no choices at the time when she was growing up. There's a massive choice now. Like girls, women, we have brought them choices. Like there is a choice. It's up to the individual now, not like it used to be. The individual person, the girl that's not just Muslim, but anyone that's just modest. Modest used to be a rude word when I first came out. When we first brought this swimsuit and hijab, like one of the things that I used to have to ask the journalists interviewing me, that, you know, sit down, I'm going to say a very rude word. And they go, wow, I'm going to swear or something. And I go, we're going to be talking about modesty, you know, and I know you can't handle that word modesty, but this is what I'm bringing out. So modesty doesn't mean it's just for Muslim women. Modesty, I mean, we brought out a swimsuit. Oh, wow. Like, for example, the French ban that just recently happened. That was crazy. That was crazy. But it wasn't just crazy with Muslim women. That was crazy for women that were crying out, that were saying, oh, I've got breast cancer, I've got issues, I'm a mum, I don't want, I don't have, I don't, finally. So, you know, I should say that the French president, or whoever's banned it, or whatever happened there, I don't even know, actually has done so good for these women that actually found it easy to find someone like me to introduce something that they don't feel comfortable in wearing presently. So yeah, this market is massively growing, not just the Muslim market, not just Muslim girls that have a choice, you know, and now they've got demand. So you can demand the choice, you know, not only if somebody's protesting the choice, you can actually fight them now, when before you didn't even have a leg to stand on. There was nothing to stand on. It wasn't even worth it. Now you can actually fight them, discrimination and reasons. You have to give me those reasons why I don't have a choice. Why I don't have a choice. You know, like we've covered all avenues why they can enter into these waters with these bikini swimsuits. We've covered all avenues. Have I not seen an avenue, or have I not seen something that you can explain it to me? They have no explanation. There is no reason. So yeah, the market is growing and it's massive. You know, like I'm just a nobody. I mean, I've had a voice, you know, and it allowed me to have that voice, but I'm not a person. There's only one of me. There's only tiny little, I'm only 4'9", comparison to those big major brands that can do something with a click of a finger like that can change a complete new concept and market and thoughts, which I should be thanking. Like I should be thanking Nike that brought out that Nike hijab. In a way, it's going to be a lot more easier for me to actually find these athletes that need my product, because I believe, once again, it's based around me, I believe that my garment is better. I'm not just the producer of a Nike hijab or a hijab. I'm a producer because I'm the market.
Yeah.
I wear
And
it.
that's from your story. I think that's one of the things that's really come out, that, you know, and it would be the case with anyone that's innovating in design, that oftentimes it comes from a place of passion, obviously, but a real sense of, this is something that's really real to you. But I think that what you touched on, Ahida, is important as well, like in the sense of, even with the FIFA and FIBA hijab bans, and it's not just those two international sports that have done this, actually. So FINA also, which is the International Federation for Swimming and Aquatics, they have a full body swimsuit ban in place currently, because, you know, in prior Olympics, people were wearing these kind of streamlined full body swimsuits and getting a competitive advantage. But obviously, as much as I love my burkini, it's not going to give me a competitive advantage. I think that's pretty clear. So I just wanted to bring Dana in on this, because obviously you, you know, as an athlete, if you had gone to netball with the available options right now in terms of modest sportswear, do you think, Dana, that you know, the sports, whether it was netball, whether it was football, whether it was rounders, obviously allowed it, but, you know, whatever sport you were going to, do you think the federations were ready to receive this? Because we've seen some organizations now, like FIFA and FIBA and FINA, etc., ban these garments.
You have to look back to when and how these sports were created and invented, and the rules were written at a time. You know, you take football, it was written by men for men, and so thinking about women in the first instance was not a factor, and then considering different men to white English men that were typically Christian. So because of the governing body doesn't change the rule books, you know, they're 153 years old. So it meant that when you then had change happening, they weren't ready for it. They had to be reactive rather than proactive. And maybe in some instances, they were scared that changing would change the fundamentals of where the sport came from. But that because they didn't understand that this is how women, and Muslim women particularly, wanted to access it. I think you've got the same issues with all of the other governing bodies, unless they've been presented with, you know, a you or a me or any of us that have played sport and challenged the norms. They don't anticipate that there's a barrier, and so they go for the fight or flight response. And some organizations like Rounders, because they don't have millions of people playing it, so maybe they want to try and retain the talent or retain the participants, they're more open to change. But then the, you know, the huge governing bodies, if they make that one movement forward, they may not understand in the first instance that the effect that it might have, and they might interpret to innovate using their voice. So as well as then having the modest sporting wear and the increased and access physical activity and sport and exercise, it's needed the other side, the governance. And I know you've done a heck of a lot of work to try and innovate and change minds and open up perceptions. And the recent kind of success of the FIBA overturn of decision for the hijab in basketball has been a huge step forward in making the platform of sport really representative of everybody that can access it. Sport is meant to be this microcosm of society, but sport was originally designed by men, for men, and done by men. So we've got this ambition and value and moral kind of, this is where we want it to be, this is the vision we have. But then there's a conflict because this is where it came from. And until the two things are brought together, there may well need to be more challenges and more education and more innovation so that the whole sporting platform is open. So some find it difficult because they're so great, but I think other sports and other, you know, you can be a fencer. That's why Ibtihaj Muhammad went straight for it. There'd be no issues for her in the same instance because of the sport she chose was Muslim friendly, which is the term I use within my classroom. But for others, I think they've seen it as something to be wary of, to be fearful of. But once you've explained the reasoning behind it, once you've explained the fact that it doesn't change the game, it just increases the participation. I think governing bodies have been brave enough to start to challenge historical behaviours, but more of that needs to happen.
Yeah, and it's a nice little segue to say, you know, tomorrow we're going to be talking about business leadership, equality, diversity, inclusion within the governance space as well. So definitely that's an area for us to explore, because definitely there needs to be more innovation in that space. And I think that, you know, some of the conversations that I've certainly had with individuals who are in the decision-making rooms have been quite challenging and worrying for me, from the perspective of when we have had to challenge hijab bans, for example. You know, we've had people comment and say certain individuals within the decision-making space have said, "Oh, my dead body, am I going to allow that in our sport?" So there's clearly issues, and we'll discuss some of that tomorrow. But in terms of you're a PE teacher as well, so you are spreading the love of sport that you have to thousands of people right across, obviously not on a yearly basis, but you know, you've got your hundreds of pupils year on year that you're working with, and I'm sure you've reached over 1,000 at least, if not more, over your career so far. And you know, for them to see a Muslim woman, a very visibly Muslim, a very proud Muslim woman, to teach them how to play sport, to teach them how to make the most of sport. What is the reaction of your students to seeing someone like yourself?
I've got to be really honest with you, Rim. I think they don't notice that I'm a Muslim anymore, which I think is the best thing. They just see, oh, that's Miss Abdul. They're too lazy to say my full surname. And, you know, the one thing that I have as a rule in my classroom is your best. And your best needs to be in any format. That might be, you know, for some girls, they feel more comfortable wearing leggings. They feel more comfortable wearing longer sleeves. And they're not Muslim. They're just girls with body confidence, self-esteem difficulties. And so we open up the access. For others, it's wearing the traditional shorts or skirts. My job, and the thing I try to do as my slight, you know, unique selling point as a teacher, is be able to answer all of their questions of curiosity, because I work in a school it's monoethnic, so it's a largely Caucasian, non-Muslim environment, and so it was a deliberate decision for me to go there, because then the barriers and the lack of knowledge that the community has, it's not a problem, it's just a fact. There are people that don't meet Muslims every day, and so I have young people that are curious to try on a hijab. They're always very impressed by how much hair I've got under here. It's always the boys that want to try them on. So I bring spares in. The boys try hijab. They are very intrigued by Ramadan and asking me how I play sport and still run while fasting. Children are the people that are going to make change happen in the future. So the fact I get to work with them is wonderful. The fact that they don't see my religion as a barrier and actually will tell me about things they've seen in the news that challenge things. So as soon as Nike brought out the hijab, the kids were like, "Have you got one yet? Have you got one yet, miss?" And they know these things. They want to celebrate it. They've all been very impressed by my various styles of bikini in the past, and they ask, "Well, how do you do it? How does it work?" They're just very curious. And maybe because of I don't look like the norm, those children that I teach that don't look like your typical sportsmen and women try a little bit more, and work a little bit more and are braver to go and do things. And thankfully, alhamdulillah, lots of them take part in after school clubs. So I'm very happy.
That's brilliant. And I think a really a point that probably women of color, women from different faith backgrounds feel all the time, that you just want to be seen as an individual contributing to your space. And that's wonderful that your students see you in that way. And long may it continue. So I just wanted to bring Ahida back into this space, actually, because I wanted to ask you, obviously, your innovation, your design came through when you were obviously in Australia and based around the Australian Muslim community and beyond that for you. So what impact have you seen of your designs in Australia and even beyond that?
I've seen, I mean, years ago, first of all, there was once, I mean, I'm talking in general, I mean, just the basic, you know, not every individual is the same, but I noticed that there was a lot of the girls that when they finished school, they would either go to university and then stay at home. So the confidence level within the girls in their teenage years and just above their teenage years. We didn't see a lot of girls that actually entered into the workforce or even part-time work. We didn't see many girls. You know, I mean, there was a few hijabis, but not as much what you see now. I find that they're a lot more confident. I see, I mean, from the 15 years I've been in this business, that I can see the development of confidence, the development of the person, the individual, a lot more healthier lifestyle. You know, the beaches are filled with Muslim girls wearing and swimming. You know, the theme parks. I mean, I've heard some mothers. I mean, I remember a woman came into my store once and purchased a swimsuit, for example, and, you know, a mother. And a week later or 2 weeks later, I saw her entering into the store again, and she was crying. Like she's crying, 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 crying. I'll never forget it. And I'm thinking, oh my God, what have I done? So, like, I had to get her a glass of water and calm her down. Like, she was crying, crying out of happiness. The fact that she has just come back from her family holiday, that this was the first time that she's ever enjoyed a family holiday amongst the swimming and the water parks, and with her children they were having, and that her relationship with the family and her husband was, you know, was to the better. And I thought, oh God, it's just a swimsuit, for God's sake. But it isn't. It's not just a swimsuit. It was a lifestyle change, a healthy lifestyle change, and a positive one. And these young girls are now able to go and swim with their mates on the weekend and enjoy that family holiday and so forth. There's a lot of holidays going on. And, you know, we get calls all the time, can you send the bikini to that destination, to my hotel, because I lost it. I've been, like, you can't go to a holiday now without your bikini in your bag. But, you know, it's the confidence. There's a lot more swimming lessons at school. There's a lot more sporting activities at school. Now, this is included where it never used to be. So, yeah, I think there's been a massive change. Massive. Yeah.
And obviously the burkini in particular came to the forefront in international media more recently in France, with the horrible situation that the ladies on the beaches have had to deal with in France. For you personally, it's going to be a bit of a controversial question. Do you think you're challenging governments and sporting institutions through this innovation and design?
Oh, yes. Well, first of all, she wasn't wearing a bikini in the first place. So it seems as though that they classify anything that's long sleeve as a bikini swimsuit. Like, that's a joke. First of all, that shows me how stupid they really are, first of all. But, you know, I'm challenged. They're threatened by us. And they just don't want us to, you know, first they say they want us to integrate, but we're integrating. We're amongst society. And it's not just us Muslim women that are demanding that coverage. It's a lot of your women too. It's a lot of them. So stop ignoring the fact that there's not only us. There's a lot of women out there that have skin cancer, that they do need coverage. Are you now classifying them as a Muslim? You know, like that's and wearing a bikini when she's just wearing a long sleeve rash shirt. It's obviously they're targeting the Muslims, but unfortunately, it's not just the Muslims that are wearing it. You know, they're not. It's a silly, but at the same time, it's also bringing my voice out and showing the world that that you are silly and I'm not. You know, it's also giving us the opportunities to fight back and question them. Now, you know, you have a point. I'm happy to listen. What is your point and what are the reasons? You can't demand and expect without, you got to take responsibility of your own voice, what you have to say. You can't say, oh, you can't, and just run around behind the corner and hide. No, you have to give us answers. Why do you protest this? Why?
And in terms of, you know, you mentioned as well that, you know, it's not just Muslim women that are using these garments. And actually, I remember a picture of one of the well-known sort of cookery program ladies here, Nigella Lawson in the UK, really well-known woman. You know, she wore it to cover up her skin because she wanted to protect her skin from the sun's potentially damaging rays. So that's a really important point. And I think just to bring Dana back in again, and you know, from my perspective, you know, all of these designs, as we were just saying earlier on, so far have brought Muslim women and potentially others to a particular place in terms of their sporting, you know, prowess, as it were. So I remember Ahida telling me when we were talking previously that Rabea Al-Ghasra, who was one of the kind of first, I guess, covered athletes out there, she competed in the Asian Games and then she competed at the Beijing Games as well. And, you know, she's not as well known as the likes of Ibtihaj, but she's been there for a number of years before. And Ahida actually gave her one of her hijuds to wear during that competition, but it wasn't known. And also in terms of here in the UK, we've got a triathlete called Shireen Garami who actually competes for Iran, but she's a British-born woman. And competing for Iran, she needs to compete covered. And one of the issues she had was finding a garment that could deal with all three sports, to deal with swimming, cycling, and running. Where do you think, it feels like there's still more innovation that's needed. Where do you think, as an athlete, this innovation needs to go?
Well, I think we're now at a point where we've got a number of Muslim women playing sport to a decent level across the world. And rather than having organizations leave it to the Muslim women themselves, you know, the work that is being done by the Muslim community is staggering, but let's not pretend the impact that having a huge endorser like Nike can have to the kind of movement and the kind of investigations and the work that needs to be done. Well, if they can combine those talented sportswomen and work with them, do some active research, go, okay, right, you've struggled to find the exact garments that you need. Well, let's work with you. Let's do some trials. Let's test things out in the same way that they do with footballers and football boots and shoes and every other piece of sporting technology. Maybe it's now about finding that relationship, that common ground, because if there is an agreement that the sports space is truly for all and that there is a genuine attempt to make it for all, then you can have those that are creating and innovating within the sports technology world, working with the people that are going to use it, because we are the marketplace, we're the customers, we're the commodity, you know, we are the people that will decide if that commodity is useful. And so if you've got somebody that's got to go and be able to run 10K, swim 5 and cycle 20, well, let them test it out, let them train it, let them tell you and work with you with what they need and go and investigate. And maybe, unlike when my family went to UK governing bodies and said, look, can you do this? Can you investigate for us? And they said, no, there's no demand. Well, there clearly is. There is absolutely a global demand from the classroom to the Olympic Stadium for this to happen. And not just for Muslim women. You know, I happen as a double-edged, I'm allergic to the sun. I suffer from something called polymorphic light eruption. So being covered actually helps me. So even if I wasn't a Muslim, dressing modestly would actually support me, because I have to have regular hospital treatment to help deal with that skin issue. Well, I don't want my body out then, because that would really hurt me. That would really damage me. So there's quite clearly a demand. And isn't the business world and isn't the sporting world about, you know, answering to that demand, working and communicating with one another? You know, I really hope that the likes of Nike might be listening to this summit this weekend, because actually then they'll see more than ever, people are asking for it. We are asking for it. As a community, we are expecting it. And instead of feeling inferior to our non-Muslim counterparts who maybe have a plethora of opportunity, work with, celebrate with, and then it doesn't become this token one item. It becomes as many and as varied items of sporting wear, of modest sportswear, for every woman that chooses to wear it, regardless of faith, to access it, but then also for the most elite to showcase it, to endorse it, to be able to you know, ascribe medals and trophies to somebody wearing different clothing, because it's not the clothing that makes me a sportswoman, it's the sport. And
yeah.
that is short. That does not matter. What does matter is what I'm able to do on that field or on that track or in that pool. And if what I'm wearing is a barrier, then somebody has to deal with that. Somebody has to work with the people demanding it to make it happen. And I think this could happen. I really, really hope it does happen, because I don't think we could ask for it any more loudly than we are doing right now.
Yeah, that's really true. And I think when, you know, I heard about the Nike Jab obviously coming out, and obviously they will have a lot of funding behind them as an organization. I think for me, the real truth for organizations that are kind of the market leaders when it comes to sportswear is going to be, will they invest in the future of our women, and designing stuff that will take them to the next level? Because what the innovators and the you know, the boutique kind of designers like the likes of Ahida did was innovate for the sake of the individual. Yes, it was a business model. Yes, it was all of that, but it was about the participant at the heart of it. And what that requires from the larger organizations is R&D, research and development, to take it to the next level. So that will be interesting to see. So a really interesting point from you there. Ahida, I just wanted to ask you then, in terms of that sort of future trends, innovation question that I was putting to Dana as an athlete, from your perspective as a businesswoman in this space, what is your definition? And this is a question that's come in from one of our viewers. What is your definition of success in terms of this space that you're working within, in terms of the modest sportswear business space?
Look, it's been from the moment we started, all we've ever had to do is introduce it, create it, introduce it, fight for it, make sure it's accepted. And we still, a lot of the struggles we still get, a lot of, you know, it's still tiring. My job is not over yet. I truly believe it's only just really starting, in fact. So it's been a bit of a struggle, but a really positive one. So it makes you work harder. Like, it's not something that it's a struggle where I feel like I have to give up. I can't give up. Like, it's not on my behalf anymore. People are relying on this. I truly believe that when I can finally relax and say, wow, this is like, we don't have to fight. You know, we don't have to demand our rights as a human to just have a positive lifestyle. And this is when I think, you know, for the athletes or the teachers out there, or the leaders of sport, or the educators of girls and women, you know, they can just focus on what they do without the struggle of trying to prove ourselves and showcase, like, bend backwards to show them that we don't have, like, we're just women. We're just women that want a positive lifestyle, that are passionate, that are wanting to go focus forward, that are leaders to our generation behind, that are good wives and daughters and mothers and sisters, and we're passionate. You know, we don't need to continue to fight for our rights. Our husbands are supporting us, our fathers are supporting us, our mothers are supporting us, and our daughters are watching us. I think our life will be a lot better if we can just get rid of all the baggage where people think and assume who we are, and just get them to ask us directly, and we'll answer directly back that we're just people just like you. And I think life will be, and business will be, a lot more better if they can just be open and let us do what we do best.
That's wonderfully said. Thank you, Ahida. Dana, just want to come to you to finish off this session. What are your hopes for our women and girls out there in terms of the future in sport? And really, yeah, what are your hopes?
Well, it's multi-leveled. The PE teacher in me and the kind of fitness for life person for me, you know, you look at the statistics, and women of British, Asian, minority ethnic identity in the UK, they're of the most inactive. So the most unhealthy, the most at risk of heart problems and coronary heart disease. And it's simply because of we have a history of telling the community that they can't be on that sports field from within the community. So if we can continue to push and share how open the sports field is for all, and have then the choices for women to access it in the many different ways that they need. So the innovations are not just about clothing, it's about innovating how we offer physical activity as well. If you can get those two things together on a community level and encourage health for life of Muslim women, I want to see with me on a Saturday morning, or entering 10K runs, or playing in the park with their children, but feeling confident to be themselves and to not hide themselves or feel in conflict with their faith. Because we need a healthier country, we need a healthier nation, and I think we need a healthier world. At the other end of the spectrum, I am waiting for that first global Olympic title for a hijabi, because I think we have made so many moves forward. But actually, when you start to then see sports women and sports teams that have Muslim next to non-Muslim, and people forget or comment about that she's Muslim first. Instead, no, she's a sportswoman first. You know, to be really honest, Rimla, I'd like the world to kind of see the sports world like my children see me as a PE teacher. They forget about my faith. They judge me on my capacity to teach them well. And that's the way it should be. We should be judged, if we are competing and excelling, on our capacity to compete. And we shouldn't therefore be celebrated or given empathy because of our faith first. It shouldn't be continually a battle and a barrier. It shouldn't continually be something that we should be congratulated for stepping forward in a time where it's difficult. I want the sports field to be equal. I want the sports field to be for all. And if we can do that at both ends, everybody healthier and happy.
Yeah, that's really beautifully put as well. Thank you both for your contribution today. I mean, I must say that unlike Dana, who runs 5, 10 Ks and plus, I don't run for no reason. So put me on a sports field and I'll run up and down, but I'll leave the 10 Ks to you, Dana, if that's okay, and the marathons probably as well. So thank you so much, both of you, for what was an amazing conversation. I really enjoyed this online cafe chat that we had. Yes. It reminded me, actually, sort of summarizing the session, it reminded me of an Urdu proverb from Pakistan, and it goes like this. It's really short. It's "Zarurat ijad ki maa hai," and what it translates to roughly is necessity is the mother of invention. And I think that our women are really leading the charge and paving the way for future generations. And as both of you have spoken about during this session, it is not just for Muslim women and girls. It is about the entire sporting community, non-sporting community out there, and how to engage people through sport and really feel the power of sports in their lives. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. Just before we do sort of close off this session, I wanted to remind everybody about the next session that we have for today, which is a Sport for Development session, which will be moderated by the ever awesome Shireen Ahmed from Toronto. That is at 6 o'clock UTC this evening. For Londoners, again, I only know London time, it's 7 o'clock this evening. And we're going to be joined during that session by 4 just inspirational women, 2 that I've gotten to meet recently as I was part of the Jordan Quest with Equal Playing Field. We have Haneen Khatib and Yasmin Shamsul, who arranged that really from the Jordan side. We also have Fatuma Abdul Qadir, multi-award-winning sport for development, particularly working in the peace space, and also Dr. Hajar Abul Fazl, who's obviously an advocate for women's empowerment through health and sport. So please do join us for that session. Thank you for joining us today, and you enjoy the rest of the summit.